The Apache woman trembled in the snow. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." Trees bent under the weight of freshly fallen snow, their branches creaking and groaning. The sky was a dull gray, and the sun's weak light barely pierced the thick clouds. Somewhere in the middle of this frozen wilderness, a lone figure struggled through the snow, her body trembling uncontrollably. She was an Apache woman, her dark hair matted with snow and her clothes thin against the biting cold. Each step was a struggle, and every breath seemed to burn in her lungs. Her eyes, dark and alert, scanned the endless white landscape, searching for shelter, for warmth, for any sign of life. She had been traveling for days, fleeing dangers she could not speak of aloud, carrying the weight of fear, loss, and exhaustion. Her body shook violently as the cold seeped into her bones. She stumbled over a hidden root and fell into the snow, the white blanket quickly soaking her thin clothes. She curled into herself, trying to make as small a target as possible, but the snow did not care about her struggles. She whispered a quiet prayer to the spirits she believed watched over her people, hoping someone, anyone, would come to her aid. But the mountains were silent, and the wind answered with a mournful howl. Hours seemed to pass as she crawled slowly, dragging herself through the snow. Her lips were blue, and her fingers had become stiff and numb. Each movement required immense effort, but she refused to give up. She thought of her family, of her people, and of the home she had been forced to leave behind. That thought alone kept her moving forward, even when every part of her body screamed to stop. In the distance, a figure appeared through the haze of falling snow. At first, she thought it was a trick of the wind, a shadow created by her exhaustion. But as the figure came closer, she realized it was real, a man walking steadily, his coat thick and his boots cutting through the snow with ease. He carried no weapon, only a bundle slung over his shoulder. He seemed to notice her almost immediately, slowing his pace and approaching with caution. The woman's heart raced. She had learned to be careful, to trust no one in a world that had shown her cruelty more often than kindness. Yet something in this man's movements suggested he meant no harm. There was a gentleness in the way he looked at her, a hesitance that told her he understood the fragility of life in these mountains. She held her breath, unsure whether to speak or remain hidden. The man knelt beside her, his eyes scanning her face and body. "You're freezing," he said in a low, calm voice. "Come with me. I have a fire. You'll be safe there." The woman hesitated. Trust was not something easily given, not after everything she had endured. But the cold was unbearable, and her strength was fading. She nodded slightly, allowing him to lift her carefully. His hands were firm but gentle, supporting her as he carried her through the snow toward a small cabin nestled between two rocky hills. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, promising warmth and safety. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled in the hearth, filling the small room with heat and light. The man set her down on a rug near the flames. "You'll be okay now," he said, moving to fetch a blanket. "Drink this," he added, handing her a small cup of warm liquid. The woman accepted it, her hands shaking as she brought it to her lips. The warmth spread slowly through her body, chasing away some of the cold that had penetrated her bones. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax, even slightly. She watched the flames dance, her mind trying to make sense of the situation. Who was this man? Why had he stopped to help her? And most importantly, could she trust him to keep her safe? She wanted to ask questions, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply whispered almost to herself, "Thank you." The man nodded, understanding the unspoken words. He seemed to sense her wariness, her need for control in a world that had taken so much from her. "Rest," he said softly. "I'll be right here. You don't have to do anything except stay warm." The woman shivered again, not entirely from the cold. There was something in the fire, in the man's presence, that made her feel a strange mix of hope and fear. She had survived countless hardships, yet she had never known anything like this. a stranger offering help without demand, without expectation. She looked at him, her dark eyes searching for signs of deceit, but all she found was patience and concern. As the night grew deeper, the snowstorm outside intensified. The wind howled through the cracks of the cabin, rattling the windows and shaking the walls. Yet inside, the fire burned steadily, a small island of warmth and safety. The woman wrapped herself in the blanket, drawing it tightly around her shoulders. She felt a strange sense of relief, knowing she had survived the day, that she had found someone willing to help. Her mind drifted back to the words she had whispered earlier, almost involuntarily. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." The words were not just about the physical warmth, but about trust, about connection, about survival in a world that had been harsh and unyielding. She did not fully understand why she had spoken them, but the thought lingered in her mind like an ember waiting to ignite. The man watched her quietly, sensing the weight of her words even if he did not fully understand them. He had seen fear, desperation, and resilience in his life, but there was something in this woman's gaze that spoke of strength tempered by vulnerability. He did not rush her, did not press for explanations. He simply ensured that the fire remained bright, that she had warmth, and that she could rest without fear. Hours passed, and the woman's breathing began to slow as exhaustion overtook her. Sleep, deep and heavy, pulled her under, but even in her dreams, the snow and cold lingered, mingling with memories of the past and the faint hope of survival. The man remained by the fire, his eyes occasionally flicking to the small figure curled on the rug. He thought about the journey she must have endured, the dangers she had faced, and the courage it had taken to survive. Morning came slowly, light filtering through the small windows, casting a soft glow across the cabin. The storm had subsided, leaving the world outside glittering with frost and ice. The woman stirred, slowly opening her eyes to find the man sitting nearby, still watching over her. She felt a wave of gratitude, mixed with lingering caution. "I'm awake," she said softly, her voice hoarse from cold and disuse. The man smiled gently. "Good, you're safe now. The worst of the storm has passed." She nodded, still wary but beginning to feel the first hints of trust. The night had been long, and the journey ahead would be just as difficult, but for the first time she did not feel entirely alone. She looked at the fire, at the man who had saved her, and she whispered again, almost to herself, "Thank you truly." The man nodded, understanding the depth of her gratitude. He did not speak, allowing the moment to linger, knowing that words were not always necessary. The connection between them was quiet but powerful, born from shared hardship and mutual need. Outside, the snow-covered mountains stood silent, their beauty harsh and unyielding. Inside, a small cabin offered warmth, safety, and the fragile beginnings of trust. The Apache woman had survived the storm, but more importantly, she had found someone willing to help her carry the weight of the cold and the fear. And as she lay there, wrapped in the blanket and feeling the fire's warmth against her skin, she remembered the words she had spoken in desperation, the promise that had slipped from her lips like a quiet plea. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." The words were simple, yet they held a promise of connection, trust, and something deeper that neither of them fully understood yet. The first chapter of her journey had ended with survival. The next chapter, she sensed, would be about trust, courage, and the fragile beginnings of a bond that might endure even in a world as harsh and unforgiving as the snow-covered mountains around them. The morning light crept through the small windows of the cabin, casting a soft, golden glow on the wooden walls. The snow outside glistened like a million tiny diamonds, sparkling in the weak sun. The storm had passed, leaving the world frozen but quiet. Inside, the Apache woman slowly rose from the rug near the fire, her body still weak from the cold of the night. Every movement reminded her of the dangers she had faced and the kindness that had saved her life. The man who had rescued her stood by the hearth, tending the fire. He had been awake for hours, making sure the cabin remained warm and that she was safe. When he noticed her stirring, he offered a gentle smile. "You slept well," he said, his voice calm and steady. "The fire kept you warm through the night." She nodded, still wary but grateful. Her lips parted and she tried to speak, but the words came out as a soft whisper. "Thank you for helping me." He nodded in acknowledgement. "You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." But there was a truth in his eyes that she could see. Not many people would have stopped, not in these mountains, not in this cold. He had chosen to help her, and that choice mattered more than words could express. The woman moved closer to the fire, holding the blanket tightly around her shoulders. The warmth seeped into her frozen body, and she felt her strength slowly returning. She remembered the long journey through the snow, the relentless cold, and the fear that had gnawed at her every step. But now, in this small cabin, for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. The man watched her quietly, sensing her inner struggle. "You must be tired," he said softly. "You should eat something. You need strength if you're going to travel again." She nodded again, hesitant. She had been without food for days, and the hunger gnawed at her stomach. The man moved to a small cupboard and retrieved some dried meat, bread, and water. He set it on a wooden table near the fire. "Eat," he encouraged gently. "It will help you regain your strength." The woman sat down and began to eat slowly, her hands still trembling. She did not speak, but her eyes followed him as he moved around the cabin. There was a quiet confidence in his movements, a sense of purpose that made her feel safer. For a moment, she allowed herself to trust him, to believe that she was not alone in this harsh world. As she ate, she began to speak, her voice low and hesitant. I was traveling alone. I got lost in the snow. I did not think I would survive." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of all she had endured. He nodded, listening patiently. "The mountains are dangerous, especially in winter," he said. "You were lucky. Many people do not survive this cold." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching for understanding. Why did you help me?" she asked. "You could have passed me by. No one would have known." He paused, considering his answer. "I saw someone in need," he said finally. "It would have been wrong to leave you. No one should be left to die alone." His words were honest, without any pretense. The woman studied him for a long moment, sensing the truth in what he said. After a pause, she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. I have not trusted anyone for a long time, but last night you saved me. You kept me warm. I am grateful." The man nodded. "It was the right thing to do, but now you must decide what to do next. You cannot stay here forever." She knew he was right. The cabin offered safety and warmth, but it was not a permanent home. The mountains were vast, and she had a journey to complete. But for the first time, she did not feel the sharp edge of fear as she thought about the road ahead. There was someone beside her now, someone willing to help, someone she could trust, even if only for a short time. As the day wore on, the woman began to regain more of her strength. She moved around the cabin slowly, exploring the small space. There were simple furnishings, a table, a few chairs, a bed in the corner, but it was enough to provide comfort in the cold. She noticed the man's belongings, carefully arranged and well kept. It was clear he was used to living in the mountains, accustomed to surviving in harsh conditions. The man watched her movements with quiet attention. "You are stronger than you think," he said. "Even after all you've been through, you are still standing." She smiled faintly, a small but genuine expression. "I had to be," she replied. "There was no other choice." The man nodded, understanding more than she could know. He had seen the strength of people tested by hardship, and he recognized it in her eyes. There was a resilience there, a determination that refused to be broken, even by the cold and fear. As the day progressed, they began to talk more openly. The woman shared fragments of her life, careful not to reveal too much too soon. She spoke of her people, her home, and the traditions she held dear. She spoke of the mountains, of the rivers and forests that had shaped her life, and of the challenges she had faced along the way. The man listened, fascinated by her stories. He asked questions not out of curiosity alone, but because he genuinely wanted to understand her. He had spent many years in the mountains, but he had never known anyone like her, someone so strong, so brave, and yet so vulnerable. There was a moment when the woman spoke of her fears, the dangers that had forced her to leave her home. She spoke of enemies, of loss, and of the uncertainty that lay ahead. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear alone, but from the weight of the memories she carried. The man reached out, gently placing his hand on hers. "You do not have to face this alone," he said. "I will help you as long as you need it. We will face the mountains together." The woman looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. She had not expected kindness like this, not in a world that had been so harsh and unforgiving. She felt a warmth in her chest, not just from the fire, but from the presence of someone willing to stand beside her. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope. The journey ahead would still be difficult, but she no longer felt completely alone. She had found an ally, someone who would not turn away in the face of danger. As evening approached, the snow outside began to melt slightly under the weak light of the setting sun. The cabin remained warm, a sanctuary against the cold world beyond its walls. The woman wrapped herself in the blanket once more, feeling the fire's heat against her skin. She looked at the man, her expression softening. "Thank you," she said again, her voice quiet but full of meaning. "For everything." He nodded, smiling gently. "Rest now. We will plan the next step together. For now, you need to regain your strength." The woman settled near the fire, letting herself relax in a way she had not allowed for a long time. She thought of the promise she had whispered the night before, the words that had slipped from her lips almost unconsciously. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." Those words had carried a deeper meaning than she had realized at the time. They were not just about warmth or survival. They were about trust, connection, and the fragile bond forming between two people in a harsh world. She did not fully understand them yet, but she felt their truth in her heart. As she drifted into sleep, she felt a sense of peace she had not known for many days. The fire crackled gently, filling the cabin with warmth and light. The man remained vigilant, watching over her as she rested, understanding the weight of her journey and the courage it had taken to survive. Outside, the mountains stood silent and majestic, their beauty harsh but undeniable. Inside, two people from different worlds had found a fragile connection, built on trust, courage, and the shared experience of surviving against the odds. The woman had survived the storm, but now she faced another journey, one that would test her strength, her heart, and her ability to trust again. And as the night fell, the cabin remained a small beacon of warmth in the frozen wilderness, a place where hope could grow, where courage could be nurtured, and where the bond between the Apache woman and the man who had saved her would begin to deepen. The day had ended, but the story was far from over. Together, they would face the challenges ahead, navigating the mountains, the dangers, and the complexities of trust and connection. The first step had been survival. The next step would be learning to rely on each other, to face the world together, and to find strength not only in themselves, but in the bond that had begun to grow between them. The days following the storm were quiet, almost deceptively calm. The snow had settled into a thick blanket over the mountains, sparkling in the weak winter sunlight. Inside the small cabin, the Apache woman grew stronger with each passing day. The warmth of the fire, the safety of the shelter, and the care of the man who had rescued her allowed her body to heal from the cold and exhaustion she had endured. Yet, while her body recovered, her mind remained restless, filled with memories of the journey she had survived and fears of what still lay ahead. The man noticed her quiet moments and did not push her to speak. Instead, he carried on with small tasks, tending the fire, gathering supplies, and preparing simple meals. Occasionally, He would offer her small pieces of dried fruit or warm tea, which she accepted gratefully, her dark eyes reflecting a mixture of appreciation and caution. She had learned long ago that trust was earned slowly, and she was determined not to give it lightly, even to someone who had saved her life. One morning, as the sun rose higher and reflected off the snow, casting bright patterns through the cabin windows, the man spoke. "We should think about your journey," he said gently. "You cannot stay here forever. The mountains are harsh and winter will not wait." The woman nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. She had been living moment to moment, focusing on survival rather than planning for the future. But now, with strength returning, she realized she had to consider her next steps carefully. "I know," she said softly, "but the road is dangerous. I cannot face it alone." He studied her closely, understanding the layers of fear and courage in her words. "You do not have to," he said. "We will face it together. You have strength, but there is no shame in accepting help. You've already survived much alone. Why not share this journey?" The woman looked into his eyes, sensing the honesty there. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope, not just for survival but for companionship, for someone willing to stand with her through the dangers ahead. She hesitated, then finally nodded. "I will trust you," she said quietly, the words heavy with significance. As they prepared to leave the cabin, the woman gathered her few belongings, small bundles of clothing, tools for survival, and a knife she carried for protection. The man ensured she was properly dressed for the cold, layering her in warm clothing and sturdy boots. He adjusted his own pack, checking supplies, maps, and the path they would take through the mountains. Every movement was careful, deliberate, reflecting the seriousness of their journey. Their path took them through forests thick with pine and fir trees, the ground covered in deep snow that slowed their progress. The woman moved carefully, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Though she had survived alone before, she now appreciated the quiet reassurance of the man beside her. His presence was a constant reminder that she no longer had to face the dangers of the mountains entirely by herself. As they traveled, they began to share stories of their lives. The woman spoke of her people, her culture, and the lessons she had learned in the harsh environment of her homeland. She told him about the skills she had acquired, how to track animals, find edible plants, and create simple shelters in the wilderness. Her stories were filled with both pride and sorrow, reflecting a life shaped by challenge and survival. The man listened intently, sharing his own experiences in the mountains, his struggles, and the moments of solitude that had defined his life. Though he had spent years alone, he had never encountered someone with the same combination of resilience and vulnerability. Listening to her, he felt a growing respect and admiration, recognizing the courage it took to survive against overwhelming odds. One afternoon, as the sun began to lower and shadows stretched across the snow, they reached a narrow mountain pass. The wind picked up suddenly, whistling through the rocks and sending sharp chills across their faces. The woman hesitated, sensing the danger. "This path, it is treacherous," she said. "One wrong step and we could fall, or worse." The man nodded, adjusting his footing carefully. "We will move slowly," he said. "Watch your step, trust yourself, and trust me." The pass was steep and slippery, with ice hidden beneath the snow. Each step required focus and courage. The woman's heart pounded as they climbed higher, but she found strength in the man's presence, in his steady guidance and calm demeanor. When she faltered, he reached out to steady her, and she took his hand, feeling a surge of gratitude and trust. As they neared the top of the pass, a sudden crack echoed through the mountains. A sheet of ice had broken under the snow, sending a cascade of frozen water down the slope. The woman froze, fear gripping her. The man reacted quickly, pulling her to safety behind a large boulder. They watched as the ice tumbled past, realizing how close they had come to disaster. Her hands trembled as she caught her breath, and the man gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," he said. You are safe now. We faced it together." The woman's lips quivered as she looked at him, a mix of fear, relief, and gratitude in her eyes. I thought we would not make it," she whispered. He nodded, squeezing her shoulder reassuringly. "We made it together. That is what matters." The incident left a lasting impression on the woman. She realized that survival was no longer just about her own strength. It was about the bond they shared, the trust they had begun to build. For the first time, she understood that asking for help was not a weakness, but a form of courage. As night approached, they found a sheltered spot near a grove of pine trees. The woman built a small fire while the man arranged a makeshift sleeping area. They shared a simple meal of dried meat and bread, speaking quietly about the day's events and the path ahead. The snow around them glistened in the firelight, casting long shadows that danced across the trees. The woman sat close to the fire, her eyes reflecting its warmth. "I have never traveled with anyone before," she said softly. "I have always relied on myself, but it is different now. I feel safer, and not alone." The man smiled gently. "You are not alone, and you will not be. We face the mountains together. We face the dangers together. And we will find our way through." As they settled to rest, the woman thought again of the promise she had whispered when she was first rescued. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." The words had carried weight then, but now they felt different, less a plea born of desperation and more a recognition of the trust and connection that had begun to grow between them. Sleep came slowly that night, each of them alert to the sounds of the forest, the distant calls of animals, and the whispering wind. Yet despite the vigilance required in the wilderness, there was a sense of comfort in each other's presence. They had survived the storm, faced treacherous paths, and navigated fear together. The bond they were forming was quiet but powerful, grounded in shared experience and mutual respect. In the morning, the snow glistened like glass, and the air was crisp and sharp. The woman and the man packed their small belongings and prepared to continue their journey. Each step forward was a reminder of the dangers that still lay ahead, but also of the growing trust between them. They no longer moved as two strangers in the mountains. They moved as partners, each relying on the other for strength, guidance, and reassurance. Along the trail, the woman demonstrated her skills, tracking the paths of animals, identifying safe plants to eat, and predicting weather changes based on subtle signs in the environment. The man watched and learned, appreciating not just her knowledge but her calm confidence and adaptability. He realized that her resilience was not only physical but mental, and it inspired him to remain vigilant, thoughtful, and careful. They encountered small challenges along the way: slippery ice, deep snowdrifts, and hidden crevices, but together they overcame each obstacle. Each success reinforced their trust, their teamwork, and their growing bond. The woman began to speak more openly, her stories and laughter mingling with the rhythm of their footsteps. The man, in turn, shared anecdotes from his own life, revealing a quiet humor and wisdom that drew her in. By the time the sun began to set on the third day of their journey, they had reached the edge of a frozen river. The ice stretched across the water like a fragile sheet of glass. The woman tested its thickness with a long branch, her instincts sharp and careful. "We must move slowly," she warned. "The ice may not hold our weight." The man nodded, trusting her judgment. Step by step, they crossed the river, careful not to make sudden movements. The woman's heart pounded, but she felt a strange sense of confidence. She knew that with him beside her, she could face challenges she would have faced alone with fear and uncertainty. When they reached the far side safely, they breathed in the cold, crisp air, feeling a sense of accomplishment and relief. They smiled at each other, a quiet acknowledgement of the trust, courage, and teamwork that had carried them through the day. As night fell, they found another safe place to rest. The woman built a fire while the man set up a sleeping area nearby. The warmth of the flames was comforting, but even more comforting was the quiet presence of someone who had proven himself reliable, strong and trustworthy. The woman looked at the fire, then at the man, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel a connection deeper than mere survival. She thought again of the words she had spoken when she was first rescued, words of promise, hope, and trust. They were no longer just words. They were a reflection of the bond forming between them, a bond built on shared trials, courage, and mutual respect. The morning sun rose pale and weak over the snow-covered mountains, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape. The wind was calmer than the previous days, but there was still a biting chill that reminded the woman and the man that winter was far from over. The Apache woman had grown stronger in the past days, her body regaining warmth and her steps becoming steadier. Yet while her strength returned, a quiet tension began to settle between them, one she could not ignore. The journey through the mountains had brought them closer, but it had also revealed the fragility of their bond. They had shared laughter and stories, but they had also faced dangers that reminded them how quickly life could change. Each step forward was a test of trust, and the woman could feel the weight of both fear and hope pressing on her chest. She glanced at the man walking beside her, noticing the quiet determination in his eyes. He had proven himself reliable, brave, and thoughtful, but she knew that survival in these mountains was never guaranteed. As they walked through a narrow valley, the wind shifted suddenly, bringing a sharp, icy chill. The woman instinctively pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "The wind, it changes quickly here," she warned. "We must find shelter soon." The man nodded, scanning the valley for signs of a safe place to rest. In the distance, they spotted a small cave partially hidden by snow-covered rocks. "That might be our best option," he said. "We can stay there until the wind dies down." They moved carefully toward the cave, the snow crunching under their boots. The woman's eyes were alert, scanning for any danger, loose rocks, hidden ice, or signs of animals. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they had saved her more than once in the past. The man followed her lead, trusting her judgment and experience in the wilderness. When they reached the cave, they found it was small but dry. The walls were smooth and curved, providing natural protection from the wind. Inside, the temperature was warmer than outside, and the air was still. The woman set down her pack and began gathering small branches and dry twigs for a fire. The man helped, arranging stones to form a safe hearth. Once the fire was lit, its warmth filled the cave, creating a safe bubble against the harsh cold outside. The woman and the man sat close to the flames, their bodies absorbing the heat and their minds slowly relaxing. Yet beneath the calm surface, a tension lingered, an unspoken awareness that their journey was far from over and that dangers, both natural and human, might still lie ahead. As they ate a simple meal of dried meat and bread, the woman spoke quietly. "I have been through much," she said. "I have faced enemies, cold, and hunger, but this journey, it is different. It is not just about surviving, it is about trusting someone else." The man nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "Trust is not easy," he said, "especially when life has taught you to rely only on yourself, but trust can also give us strength. You have survived because you are strong, but together we can be stronger." The woman looked into his eyes, seeing the truth in his words. For the first time, she felt a sense of hope that went beyond mere survival. She realized that the bond they were forming was not just about warmth or safety. It was about connection, respect, and understanding. Yet, the thought also brought a flicker of fear. She had relied on herself for so long that the idea of depending on someone else felt strange and fragile. As the day wore on, they explored the area around the cave, searching for a path that would lead them safely through the mountains. The snow was deep, and hidden dangers lurked beneath its pristine surface. Rocks covered in ice, thin layers of snow over hidden streams, and sudden drops required constant attention. The woman led the way, her knowledge of the wilderness guiding each careful step. During a brief rest, the woman and the man shared stories of their pasts. She spoke of her people, their traditions, and the lessons she had learned from elders. She spoke of courage, honor, and survival, emphasizing the importance of wisdom and patience. The man listened intently, sharing his own experiences, his struggles, his solitude, and the moments that had taught him resilience. Each story deepened their understanding of one another, building respect and trust. Suddenly, as the sun began to lower, they heard a distant sound, shouts and footsteps crunching in the snow. The woman's eyes widened and she froze. "We are not alone," she whispered. "Someone or something is coming." The man immediately scanned the area, noting the shadows moving between the trees. "Stay calm," he said. "We do not know who they are yet. We must be ready, but we cannot panic." The woman nodded, her heart pounding. She had faced enemies before, but the vulnerability of traveling with someone else, and the responsibility of keeping them safe, added a new weight to her fear. She reached for her knife, holding it tightly as they crouched behind a boulder, observing the approaching figures. A group of men appeared through the snow, bundled in heavy coats and carrying tools and weapons. They were travelers, perhaps hunters or settlers, but their intentions were unclear. The woman tensed, ready to defend herself, while the man remained calm, assessing the situation. "We will wait," he whispered. "If they are dangerous, we can retreat deeper into the mountains. If not, we will find a way to pass safely." The men approached the area near the cave but did not notice the woman and the man hidden behind the rocks. The wind carried their voices faintly, discussing their own path and the challenges of the snow. The woman breathed a quiet sigh of relief, though her body remained tense. She realized how delicate their safety was, how easily it could be threatened by forces beyond their control. After the men passed, the woman and the man continued their journey, moving carefully and silently. The incident reminded them both of the harsh reality of the wilderness. They were not only facing nature's challenges, but also the presence of others whose intentions could not be predicted. The woman's trust in the man deepened. She recognized his calm judgment and his ability to navigate danger without panic. That night, they found a small sheltered area beneath a cluster of pine trees. The woman built a fire and the man arranged their sleeping area. As the fire crackled, the woman sat close, feeling the warmth seep into her tired muscles. "Today was difficult," she said softly, "not because of the cold, but because the world is unpredictable. Even when we think we are safe, danger can come." The man nodded, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "That is true," he said, "but we survived. We are still here, and that matters. Each challenge we face together makes us stronger, teaches us to trust, and reminds us to be careful. We cannot control the world, but we can control how we respond to it." The woman considered his words. She had always relied on herself, her instincts, and her skills. Yet she realized that relying on someone else did not weaken her, it strengthened her. She could face dangers with the man beside her, not just with her own strength, but with the combined courage and wisdom they shared. As they prepared to rest, the woman thought again of the promise she had whispered long ago, "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." She now understood that warmth was more than physical, it was emotional, a trust, a bond, and a commitment to face the world together. The words had taken on a deeper meaning, reflecting not desperation, but recognition of the connection forming between them. They settled near the fire, bodies close for warmth, but also for the reassurance of presence. The night was quiet, but the lessons of the day remained vivid in their minds. The unpredictability of the world, the importance of trust, and the strength found in shared courage. The woman felt a quiet pride in her growing resilience, and a growing sense of comfort in the man's companionship. In the early hours of the morning, a soft snow began to fall again, dusting the mountains with a delicate layer of white. The woman and the man were already awake, preparing to continue their journey. Each step forward was now a careful balance of caution and courage. They knew the dangers of the mountains could return at any moment, but they also knew that together, they could navigate the challenges ahead. The woman paused for a moment, looking at the man. "We have faced much together," she said quietly. "And yet I feel there is still more to come. I am ready to face it with you." The man looked back at her, a faint smile on his face. "Then we face it together," he said. "Whatever comes, we will not face it alone." And so they continued through the snow-covered mountains, step by step, challenge by challenge, their bond growing stronger with every shared danger and every act of trust. The journey was far from over, but the lessons of the past days, resilience, courage, and the power of connection, would guide them through the challenges still ahead. The world around them was harsh, unpredictable, and sometimes frightening. But within that harshness, they had found warmth, companionship, and the quiet understanding that survival was not just about strength alone. It was about trust, courage, and facing life together. The sun rose slowly over the mountains, casting a soft, golden light on the snow-covered landscape. The world was calm and still, the silence broken only by the gentle crunch of snow beneath their boots. The Apache woman and the man had traveled far since the storm, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Yet despite their progress, they both understood that the journey ahead was not without danger. The mountains were unpredictable, and winter had not yet released its grip. As they walked side by side, the woman felt a sense of calm she had never known in her life. The fire, the shelter, and the companionship of the man had given her more than physical warmth. They had given her hope. Her steps were steady, and her eyes, once wary and searching for danger, now carried a quiet confidence. She knew that the mountains still held risks, but she also knew that she did not have to face them alone. The man glanced at her, noticing the change in her demeanor. "You have grown stronger," he said softly, "not just in body but in spirit. You trust yourself and now you trust me. That makes all the difference." The woman smiled faintly, a mixture of pride and gratitude in her expression. "I have learned much," she replied. "Not just about the mountains, but about courage, trust, and the strength that comes from relying on someone else." They continued their journey, moving carefully through forests and across frozen streams. The snow was deep in some places, slowing their progress, but the woman's experience and the man's guidance allowed them to navigate the landscape safely. They shared small tasks, breaking branches for firewood, checking the ice on the streams, and scouting the path ahead. Each task was a reminder that survival required cooperation, patience, and attentiveness. As the afternoon sun began to dip, they reached a small clearing. The view was breathtaking. Snow-covered peaks stretched endlessly in every direction, their beauty stark and majestic. The woman paused, taking a deep breath, allowing herself to absorb the sight. For the first time in many days, she felt a sense of peace, a momentary escape from the constant tension of survival. The man stood beside her, silently observing the view. "It is beautiful," he said softly, "a reminder that the world can be harsh, but it can also be full of wonder." The woman nodded. "Yes, it is easy to forget beauty when you are focused on survival, but moments like this, they remind us why we keep moving forward." As night approached, they set up a small camp near the clearing. The woman built a fire, carefully arranging stones and dry wood, while the man gathered more firewood and set up their sleeping area. The warmth of the flames filled the cold air, creating a comforting cocoon against the freezing night. They shared a simple meal, eating quietly and reflecting on the journey so far. The woman felt a growing sense of connection, not just to the man, but to the world around her. The mountains, the snow, and the harsh conditions had tested her, but they had also taught her resilience, patience, and the value of companionship. After the meal, the woman spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I have traveled alone for so long," she said. "I thought strength meant facing everything by myself. But now, I understand that true strength can also mean trusting someone else and letting them help you carry the burden." The man reached out, placing a gentle hand on hers. "You have shown me that courage is not just about facing danger, but about opening your heart, even when it is difficult. We have both learned much on this journey." The woman felt warmth spread through her chest, not just from the fire, but from the presence of someone who had proven himself reliable, kind, and steadfast. She remembered the words she had whispered when she was first rescued. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." The meaning of those words had deepened. They were no longer a plea born of fear, but a recognition of the bond they had formed, a bond built on trust, courage, and mutual respect. As the night deepened, they sat close to the fire, sharing quiet conversation. The woman spoke of her hopes for the future, of the life she wanted to build once the mountains were behind them. She spoke of dreams she had once thought impossible, now made possible by the trust and companionship she had found. The man listened, offering encouragement and understanding. He shared his own dreams, his desire for a life where he was not alone in the wilderness, and his wish to protect and care for someone he respected and trusted. The conversation deepened their connection, revealing not just shared experiences, but shared values and aspirations. Later, as the fire burned low, the woman settled closer to the man for warmth. The night was cold, and the snow outside continued to fall softly, but within the circle of their firelight, there was a sense of safety and comfort. The woman felt a deep gratitude for the journey, for the challenges they had faced, and for the bond that had grown from hardship and trust. In the stillness of the night, she whispered again, almost to herself, the words that had begun their connection. "Keep me warm, and I will be yours every night." This time, the words were filled with meaning and intention. They were a promise, not of obligation but of partnership, a commitment to face the world together, to support and protect one another, and to honor the trust they had built. The man turned to her, his eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. "And I will," he said quietly. "Not because of words, but because of what we share. We have faced danger, fear, and uncertainty together. That is what binds us." The woman smiled, a mixture of relief, joy, and understanding. She realized that the journey had changed her, not just in body, but in heart and spirit. She had learned that courage was not only about surviving the mountains, but about opening herself to connection, trust, and love. The night passed peacefully, the snow falling gently around their camp. They slept in close proximity, comforted by the warmth of the fire and each other's presence. In their dreams, the mountains were no longer a place of fear, but a place where strength, trust, and connection could flourish. Morning came, bringing light and a renewed sense of purpose. The woman and the man packed their belongings and continued their journey. The mountains stretched endlessly ahead, but they were no longer daunting. Together, they moved with confidence, their steps steady and synchronized. The challenges they faced were still real, but the trust they had built made each obstacle manageable. Along the trail, the woman demonstrated her skills in survival and navigation, while the man offered guidance and support. Each task was a reminder of the partnership they had formed, a relationship based not on obligation, but on mutual respect, courage, and trust. They shared laughter, quiet conversation, and moments of reflection, building a foundation for a bond that would endure beyond the mountains. By the afternoon, they reached a high ridge overlooking a valley below. The view was breathtaking, with snow-capped peaks, frozen rivers, and dense forests stretching as far as the eye could see. The woman paused, taking in the sight. She felt a sense of accomplishment and gratitude, knowing they had come far together. The man stood beside her, quietly observing her reaction. "We have faced much," he said softly, "but we are here together. That is what matters." The woman turned to him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight and the warmth she felt inside. "Yes," she said, "together. And that is more than enough." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the mountains, they set up a final camp for the day. The fire crackled warmly, and the snow outside shimmered in the fading light. The woman and the man sat close, sharing a simple meal and reflecting on their journey. They spoke of the dangers they had faced, the lessons they had learned, and the trust they had built. The woman felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had survived the storm, the cold, and the challenges of the mountains. More importantly, she had found a bond that transcended mere survival, a connection built on trust, courage, and mutual respect. She realized that true strength was not only about facing hardships alone, but about facing them together with someone who shared your journey and your heart. As the night deepened, the woman settled close to the man, the warmth of the fire and his presence enveloping her. She whispered once more, softly and with intention, the words that had become a symbol of their bond. "Keep me warm and I will be yours every night." The man smiled, understanding the depth of her promise. "And I will," he replied, his voice steady and sincere. "Because we face the world together, and because I trust you as I know you trust me." The snow fell gently around their camp, a silent witness to their journey and the bond they had forged. The mountains, once harsh and intimidating, now felt like a place where courage, trust, and connection could grow. The Apache woman had survived, but more importantly, she had discovered the strength of companionship, the warmth of trust, and the quiet power of love. As they drifted into sleep, the fire casting a soft glow around them, they knew that the journey was far from over. Challenges would come, dangers would arise, and the mountains would continue to test them. But together, they could face anything. The bond they had formed was not fleeting, it was enduring, a promise of support, trust, and connection that would guide them through the world beyond the snow-covered peaks. The first light of morning found them awake and ready, their steps light but purposeful. They moved forward with confidence, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And in the quiet moments between the wind, the snow, and the mountains, they held fast to the warmth, the trust, and the bond that had carried them through the storm and would carry them through life.